So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is... wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wait For It podcast. I am your co-host, Phil Barrera, aka Phil the Filipino.
And I'm your other co-host, Mr. Eric Almighty. And for this edition of the Game Room Where It Happens, we are going to cover a game that just released this month. We like to get into the classics on this series, but sometimes we like to jump into those new games and give a fresh opinion on its release. So Phil, we are here to talk about Marvel Rivals, and man, was this highly anticipated and so worth the wait.
Talk about a game that, upon its announcement, I think a lot of us were like, are you kidding me? This is what Marvel is going to do next. This is going to have how they're going to follow up the disaster that was the Square Enix Avengers game. And then, even though I am a huge believer in the Guardians of the Galaxy game, and I hope that is something that we cover down the line. And but as far as Marvel games goes, they've kind of lost their way. Midnight Suns was not really something that a lot of people wanted to play. Like, you and I aren't really turn-based strategy games. That was something we were never going to dive into. But when they all of a sudden announced basically an Overwatch clone, a lot of people rolled their eyes. Well, a lot of those people are probably taking back what they initially said or thought when it comes to Marvel Rivals. So very excited to jump into this, Eric, as we have spent quite a bit of time in this game. If I pull up Steam right now, I currently have 24 hours, a good solid day of gameplay into this, as well as some of our friends. So I'm excited to discuss this and maybe sway some of the people that are a little bit on the fence, or maybe didn't even know Marvel Rivals was a thing yet, and let them know that it is indeed worth their time.
Yeah, and while this is obviously really early, so depending on when you're listening to this, you're getting, again, the first couple weeks of gameplay out of us, and they just started releasing content. They're going to be releasing new content, new skins, so there's so much to this game that has been left unexplored, but we just couldn't wait another month or so to talk about this game, because it was one, Phil, that I don't know about playing. Like, I didn't know I was going to play this game until you really drove home what you were seeing, what you were hearing, and that it was going to be worth our time. And if you know us on this show, we are always looking for a new multiplayer experience so we don't go back to Fortnite, which we have been successful in the later parts of 2024, and it looks like that will continue going into next year. So Phil, kind of walk us through a little bit about what made you get into the game, and then in turn essentially shoehorn me and some of our other friends into playing it with you.
Yeah, first let me give you guys the Steam synopsis of this game. Marvel Rivals is a superhero team-based PvP shooter. Assemble an all-star Marvel squad, devise countless strategies by combining powers to form unique team-up skills, and fight in destructible, ever-changing battlefields across the continually evolving Marvel universe. And like I mentioned, saw the initial trailer for this, was like, are they really going to do like an Overwatch clone? This is going to be probably some cash grab that in a few months won't even exist. Well, that all changed when the beta came out. Now, I didn't get a beta code. However, my sister and I started very much like heavily looking into the gameplay of this when it came to the beta, and a lot of positive feedback was coming out of it. I mean, the art style looks great. The controls are very easy to pick up. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get us wrong. This is challenging, and there is a learning curve, and there will be games where you get absolutely annihilated, but the difference is we're having a lot of fun. So that's where it really started, was when we started seeing that gameplay come out. Content creators were singing its praises, and I was like, okay, we might be onto something, because we wanted to enjoy, and I think we did for a little bit. We enjoyed Overwatch 2. Never really played Overwatch 1. Not sure how that won Game of the Year over Uncharted 4 back in the day. That's a story for another time. But Overwatch 2, in the beginning stages, we were like, okay, this is pretty fun. I can see why people enjoy this. And then, Overwatch 2 and Blizzard did Overwatch 2 and Blizzard things. So when there is a market for a new hero-based PvP shooter, Marvel Rivals and NetEase Games, they saw that market and they did pretty much everything that Overwatch 2, everything wrong that Overwatch 2 was doing. They were like, let's avoid that. Let's see what people are straying away from in Overwatch 2, and let's make sure we don't make those same mistakes. So as that process and the release date got closer and closer, Eric, I made sure to let everybody know in our group chat. I was like, hey, keep your eye on this. It's free to play. I think we'll have a good time with it, and I think if we get a good amount of people to play together, this could be something that ends up in our rotation pretty consistently. And so far, like you said, Eric, here a couple weeks into December, it has done that.
This episode's actually kind of funny because we could have done an Overwatch 2 episode like at any point, and now it's going to be pointless because this game is essentially, again, just replacing that in our catalog. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Phil, I really do think that the hero team-based PvP field of gaming is wide open. Like, Overwatch never really took the title. They were just kind of there by default. But I definitely think there's an opportunity in this particular market to make a splash, and Marvel Rivals has done just that. Now, can it keep up the momentum? I think that's worth the conversation, because this game is not like blowing Metacritic and regular scores and ratings out of the water. There are some things about this game, like Overwatch and similar games of this nature, that there are problems present. But I don't think, honestly, those outweigh the fun that we're having. And ultimately, Phil, that's kind of the simplicity I'm starting the conversation off with. I'm just having a really good time with an IP that I'm very comfortable and I know and I love. I think that alone has mass appeal. It's free to play. And again, the content that they are promising moving forward, the hope of that promise makes this very, very appealing.
Yeah, free to play is the key here. So again, if you have not jumped into this game, if you have been hesitant and you're like, well, Overwatch wasn't necessarily my thing. I mean, it is free. So if you have a couple of friends, because communication is very important when it comes to this game. I know not everybody has that luxury that we have, Eric. We've talked about that. We know how incredibly lucky we are to have people to play with. Not everybody has that. But I do think that you can jump into a game and whether or not you have a party and find a character that you enjoy. It's pretty, it does have a really helpful practice level. So you can go in and just like Overwatch, so you can go in and try out the different characters. Each character has a very detailed hero like info screen, which is very helpful. And honestly, like, when we were playing with your brother Stefan the other day, he's been on the podcast a few times, and Stefan is as hardcore a gamer as you could probably get. Like, he makes Eric and I look like novices. But, we were playing the other day with also Andrew from Friendly Neighborhood Gamers, and he was like, hey, we're in the beginning stages of this game. Try out new characters. Figure out what works for you and what does not. And I think that's what the nice thing has been about the early stages of this game. Like I said, yes, there are going to be instances where you get completely wiped out, but there is opportunity here to mess around and kind of just feel it out. And I think that's a really good thing. So you do mention, like, Eric, you said Overwatch just kind of, there were competitors for Overwatch that they just never panned out. Like Overwatch 1 did a lot of really, really great things. I mean, like Battleborn tried it. I think Cliff Bleszinski from the Gears of War fame, he tried to put out one, and that was just not good. So like you said, yeah, for a long time it was just Overwatch, and then Overwatch 2 came out and it was a disaster. So like you said, with it being an IP and characters that people are familiar with, and then also introducing new characters, it has been just the perfect storm, and I really hope that they are able to keep this up. Earlier in the year, we talked about Helldivers 2, and they had some missteps along the way. I hope that they have looked at this landscape, they see what gamers like and what they do not like, and they're able to keep it up. And we have our first free update by the time this episode comes out in 2 days, the 20th. So that's looking really good, and you don't have to spend any money on it, even though, unfortunately, I have.
Now, I haven't quite gotten there yet with the Battle Pass. I'd like to see a little bit more offerings there before I maybe make that decision. I also want to play the game a little bit more, and we will continue to play. I think, Phil, this game has a lot to explore. Obviously, we have not played every single character yet. It's a very vast catalog, over 30 playable characters, and they're all broken up into 3 different categories if you're unfamiliar with the genre. So Duelist, which is obviously your offensive class. You have your Vanguards, your all-rounder class, but they're more like tanks in Overwatch terms. And then Strategists, which are your support class, also your healers, essentially. And that type of gameplay is very interesting to people that have never done it before, in the sense that it adds a whole nother element of strategy to the gameplay. And that's not for everybody. But I also do think the fact that not only is each character so different when you're playing them, there's also the fact that you can have that hero synergy, where if you play 2 to 3 specific heroes at the same time, you get other abilities and perks that you can leverage. And I think that just adds such a nice freshness to the gameplay that you don't really see in other multiplayer experiences. So while there is that learning curve, and it absolutely is challenging, Phil, I like to think it's really challenging in a good way, because ultimately you're kind of figuring out what works, what doesn't. And we're not even getting into the whole element of, once you learn how to use a character, you then have to figure out who they're effective against. That's a whole nother aspect that is going to make the difference between a novice player and an expert player. Right now, we are very much under novice, but again, having a good time with the learning curve anyway.
Yeah, there are definitely going to be games where you need to switch up your strategy and figure out the best way to counter certain characters, which I very much enjoy. There are definitely some opportunities which we'll talk about here in just a moment, but getting to learn these characters and learn what works for me and what doesn't has been a lot of fun. I am still trying to find a healer that I enjoy. I think I finally found my tank, Eric. I really like Peni Parker. And then, if you guys know me, I have a Moon Knight tattoo. Moon Knight has been my go-to. And then, if you play as Iron Fist, I hope your PC burns. That's all I really have to say. But somebody put it this way, Eric, and I want to know if you feel the same way. Somebody said this on Twitter. Each character, in its own way, is kind of overpowered, which somehow kind of makes the game balanced.
Oh, 100%, yeah. Again, the characters that come to mind are like the Iron Fist character, obviously, where it's just punches and healing galore. Like, I just don't know how he can have those abilities.
The first time I tried Iron Fist, I was like, there's no way this is a character that's
no
in
way.
the game.
But at the same time, like, he's completely useless against a character like Hawkeye at a range, right? Obviously, if he gets up close, you're in a lot of trouble. But if you play like a Black Widow, a Hawkeye, or these other characters that have a little bit of range to them, Iron Fist is much less fun to play. And it's more fun to play when there's like an objective that you can really dominate, versus Convoy, where you're having to travel and there's characters coming from all over the place. So the modes are really cool and very simple, and when done right, they can be elevated by the characters and the characters' abilities. For me, I have a couple characters that I go to, Phil, and you mentioned a couple on your end. As the Vanguard, I've definitely leaned towards Venom and Groot. Venom more an offensive tank, and Groot more defensive. But I've also really enjoyed Captain America. I have been stuck in that Vanguard position more often than not, because everybody wants to be a duelist. That's not just a thing in our friend group. That's like the running gag about Marvel Rivals. And we'll talk about why that can present a problem if you don't have people to play with. But I also, as duelist, I've gotten a little bit of playtime with Hawkeye. Obviously, Iron Fist in the right situation is a lot of fun. Wolverine, also a character I'm really starting to leverage more. And then I'm also, from a strategist perspective, that healer, still figuring that out. But come on now, Jeff the Land Shark, easy go-to. So, I mean, it's definitely a great time. And there's so many characters here, Phil, on the list that I'm looking at, that I just haven't touched at all. And that's what really makes this exciting. It's less exciting, though, if you don't have people to play with, and I definitely think that's a detriment that is going to need to be discussed.
Yeah, and listen, also, there are people that still like to queue into open parties and just talk to strangers. I am well past that in my age. I do not like to do that. I want to talk to only the people that I know, and I don't want to talk to strangers. So if that is something that you are okay with, then you're not really going to run into that issue. So, yeah, it has been a lot of fun. And I do think the star coming out of this has been Jeff. I mean, he's the focus of a whole lot of memes, even though I think you can make the argument, Eric, he's probably the worst healer. Not like a D or F tier healer, I think, just compared to the rest of them. He is a good starter healer. So I think he has come out here as the star for sure. One thing I did see somebody mention, and as we kind of transition into maybe some opportunities, I do think they need to introduce more main character healers. So I think probably the biggest name in there is probably Loki. And then all the rest I feel like are kind of like secondary sidekick characters. Adam Warlock, obviously very famous. He's in, the new Guardians movie. But as far as like casual Marvel fans, I think Loki is probably going to be the only one. So I think they need to introduce more. And we're going to get some more, some characters that have leaked that we are coming out that are going to be healers. But I would like to see them maybe give people more incentive to be a healer, and maybe it's because they don't know any of those characters very well, and that's necessarily why some people are just not picking them over Duelist or, Vanguard.
I mean, yeah, for sure. There's a lot of characters. We could say that they should have more known characters, but I do like the diversity that they have of getting some of those characters that we haven't gotten to get a lot of exposure to. Cloak and Dagger is a little bit more like mid-tier as far as knowledge, but I do agree that specific class struggling the most as far as notoriety. But at the same time, I definitely would have preferred that we saved, like, I don't know, just looking at a couple characters here, like Thor, for example, or like a Black Panther, Doctor Strange, and maybe Doctor Strange is on the cusp, but there are some characters that you absolutely kind of know, obviously MCU-wise, that I would have been okay if we waited a little bit longer to get them in favor of some of those lesser known characters. I think the real question is, what are they really going to come up with as the story and as the gameplay progresses? Because they have a wide variety, an endless variety of characters that they can introduce. So I think that just makes it exciting. I don't know. I'm not necessarily too impatient about what's to come.
Yeah, and some of those character leaks, we won't mention them here, but some of those are very, very exciting. So, I mean, you can make it makes like in theory, obviously it makes sense that Groot is a tank. But if you wanted to configure him a little bit to be a healer, to use like, something in his ability that heals, I could totally buy it. So, maybe it's just tinkering some of those characters and releasing more, mainstream characters as healers would help as far as the balancing. You already referenced it a moment ago, people not wanting to queue up as either a tank or a healer. Everybody wants to be duelist. I do remember in Overwatch 2 there being a mode where you can slot in people. So it will force people to be, you're going to have 2 attack, you're going to have 2 support, you're going to have 1 healer or something along those lines. So that would definitely be very beneficial for Marvel Rivals. Now again, we haven't had that much of an issue because we've had a lot of nights where we've had 6 people. Again, we understand that's not going to be the case for everybody. So something like that would be very beneficial in terms of balancing the game. So Eric, what are some of the opportunities that you have spotted that you would like to see maybe fixed or tinkered with in terms of Rivals?
Well, first and foremost, let's mention one more positive. Unlike other release experiences, Phil, we did not have those issues. In fact, this game was queuing up a little too fast. And I transitioned that positive into maybe a minor criticism for me, which is that I feel like I have like no time to really make a decision by the time the game actually starts. Now, there is a little window from when you actually game start to when the objective happens, but if you have to like go to a convoy, I really only have like 30 seconds to make a decision. And I feel like this early into gameplay for such a new game, this should be a little bit more grace. 15, 10 more seconds? It might be minor. It might sound like nitpicking, but that would have made a world of difference where, again, Phil, the first night we played, it was literally back to back to back, and you had no time to breathe. So a little bit of breathing room, I think, could help, but in the same breath, I can't really complain that they're giving me fast matchmaking. Like, it just sounds silly.
Well, remember, Eric, just a week ago, we played zombies with a couple of our friends, and all 4 of us were getting kicked. And we were rolling in zombies as well,
Man.
which was so frustrating. We were on a really great run. And here comes Rivals again. It has no issues upon release, which is absolutely unheard of in terms of servers and, you know, having to go down for unexpected maintenance or anything like that. Haven't really run into any issues with cheating. Unless you're playing Iron Fist, you are cheating. But other than that, haven't had any issues. So, yeah, there aren't really too many things except for maybe, again, just finding a way to make sure if you are having to play with randoms to make sure people are slotted in to specific slots. But other than that, I mean, it has just been a whole lot of fun. It runs great on PC, runs great on console. Oh, you know what? Here is the one thing I talked about this with Andrew from Friendly Neighborhood Gamers. So if you are wondering if you can play on, like, say, Xbox and then also play on your PC and all your things are connected, they are not. So that's one of those things. So, like, say, for example, like, I can play Fortnite on any one of my consoles or on my PC. All my skins are there, all my purchases and everything like that. That is not the case with Marvel Rivals. They need to fix that. That is actually one of the things that's preventing me from purchasing a Battle Pass. Andrew from Friendly Neighborhood Gamer, same thing. Because I bought the Moon Knight skin on PC, and then I was like, oh, you know what, let me go play on PlayStation because I wanted to, like, sit in my room and play it. None of that is there. None of that is connected, so they need to come up with some sort of system, which is not going to be difficult. You have to create an account with Marvel Rivals or whatever it may be, so that way all that stuff is cross-platform. But again, that's a really minor thing. I can just sit here and play on my PC, but it would be nice for everything to be connected the same way that, you know, Fortnite is.
Yeah, that's a valid complaint for sure. And these are all things I think that are growing pains with a game like this. We do talk about the matchmaking a lot. Again, if I wasn't playing with a group of friends, this isn't a Helldiver situation where I would jump into an open lobby. I don't think it's that type of game that would make me open to that, but you kind of would have to in order to enjoy the game. So I do think that's something that hopefully can get addressed in some way. I don't know if enforced is the right word, but we'll see what happens. From a gameplay perspective, I would say the only thing that I can really think of is, and this is the type of game it is, so I don't know that this is ever going to change, but the speed in which your character just kind of runs is always something, even from the Overwatch days, that I didn't love. As a gamer, it would be nice to have some type of sprinting feature. And again, even if it's just like a little bit over time. I mean, I get we all played Fortnite and we didn't know what the world could do until we learned how to sprint and climb walls and drive cars and planes. But again, I don't know if they'll change that. That's something maybe more of a personal gripe on my end. I do wish it was just a little bit faster, especially when you're having to get from objective to objective. You know, you die defending a convoy or attacking a convoy, and you've got this trek to make it to the other side. That's part of the game, but at the same time, also something that I don't necessarily love.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I've never suggested us play Battlefield, because when you die, you like have to trek all the way across this giant battlefield, hence the name of the game. But yeah, it is a little bit slow with some of the characters. You know, obviously some of them have dash abilities and glide and things like that, but it can take a while, especially when you're like at the very end, when you're doing like the, you know, the what's the game mode where you have to, you know, move the thing from point A to point B, whatever that's called.
Convoy?
Convoy, there you go. I don't know why I couldn't think of the word convoy, but yeah, but those again are pretty minor things, and has never detracted or stopped us from wanting to play it. So, but yeah, I mean, if you can't tell, the overall message is give it a shot, even if it's not necessarily your thing. And especially if you and your friends are looking for something new to play, I think it's something that's incredibly easy to just jump into and have a pretty solid time. So, again, free to play. I've got 24 hours on it, and I don't intend on change that up. But we're eating good, man. We got a good rotation right now. Even though we aren't playing Fortnite as much, they've added some new modes, and they got the OG mode coming back. We're getting back into zombies, which has been a lot of fun. The Black Ops and Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer is still in light rotation. So honestly, Eric, it's a good time right now. It's a good time to be a multiplayer gamer specifically. And then as seen on my, if you're joined our Discord, you can see that my most played game of the year was College Football 25. That has not changed. So you just got a PC. We're gaming, man. We're eating right now.
Yeah, no, don't be surprised if some Marvel Rivals shows up again on the stream, and I join from time to time. It's a lot of things in the work for 2025, but yeah, no, I'm definitely excited for what the future holds. As far as this game is concerned, Marvel Rivals for PC and PlayStation generally favorable on Metacritic. 75 I'm seeing here, with a mixed or average review of a 7.4 user score. So from what I could see very quickly, just kind of scanning through reviews, very much this is just Overwatch but Marvel. So again, if that's a problem for you, then yeah, this game isn't going to really offer anything special if you're a hardcore Overwatch player. But I will just restate that I think this particular niche in gaming still has a lot of vastness that's been unexplored. And I think that this game can take the best parts of what an Overwatch has done and really take that baton and move the genre of gaming forward. Now, that may be a bold claim, but again, I think it's wide open enough where they can do that. Will they? A whole nother question, and we'll see whether or not this episode ages well a year from now.
Yeah, it'll be fun to look back and see if we're still playing this, or if Fortnite continues to reign supreme. We've also sprinkled in some Rocket League back into our rotation, so it's a wild time to end 2024. But again, like you said, the reception has been pretty solid, and yeah, it's basically Overwatch 2, but you get to play as Iron Man, so it's better than Overwatch 2. I don't know what to tell you. So, Eric, anything else you think we need to mention for this episode? Relatively short and sweet. Our last really official episode of 2024 before our end of the year awards, and maybe one more. What did I miss? But other than that, man, I'm happy we were able to end the Game Room series on a positive note, because Lord knows it has been a rough year.
Yes, and we are taking that internal feedback and really taking it into the new year. So we'll definitely be discussing some things going into the new year about how we can improve that. But this is absolutely, Phil, a great way to end 2024 with another surprising game that came out this year. And as I mentioned at the top of the episode, we like to cover a lot of classics on this series, but we are starting to get our friendly neighborhood gamer on and trying to jump into the now, which is awesome. So this is, I think, the time, Phil, where we announce that January episode is Astrobot, correct? Game of the Year winner?
I'm sorry? Never heard of it.
That's crazy.
You mean Balatro?
You didn't even say it right. It's Balatro.
Balatro. I'm never going to play Balatro, but I did like what their, I don't know if you saw their like game developer or whatever tweeted out today. So Peggy gave them an 18 and up rating because they have like demonic cards in their game or something like that. And there is something he tweeted out something like, well, maybe I should add loot boxes and other predatory practices like EA FC 2025. So shout out to Balatro, didn't win, but yeah, man. Hey, listen, flowers where flowers are due. You saw that in a down year. Astrobot can win.
You're an asshole. No, Astrobot deserve it. Maybe could I maybe convince you to fully play Astro's Playroom?
I played Astro's Playroom.
The whole thing?
No, I didn't need to. I figured out. I learned how. It taught me how to use the controller.
You're annoying. See, that's what I'm saying. You played like an hour of it.
Yeah, no, I didn't need to. It taught me how to use the controller.
You got to play the whole thing,
That's all
and then
I
you'll understand.
I understand because it's just Crash Bandicoot.
No, it's not. All right.
It's just Ratchet and Clank.
You're gonna make me mad. No, yeah. Again, there maybe Balatra's only like $13 on
I'm not
Steam.
playing a card game.
Okay, well, guys, this is the last episode of the Game Room where it happens. I guess next month will finally be Fortnite. Phil, take us out of here. We were trying to end on a good note, and I think I ruined it.
You're the one who brought up Astro.
I think I ruined it. So Marvel Rivals, great time. Check it out.
Yeah.
And I really hope that this episode ages well a year from now. Yes. They've just given us a ton of endless content, and the gameplay has improved. Time will tell. So, yeah, Phil, take us out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us for not only this, but every episode of the Game Room where it happens. So if you want to know where to find the rest of them, maybe you want to catch up, you can find everything you need in the Linktree link in the show notes of this and every single episode. You'll also find our social media pages, the most important ones to keep up with being TikTok, Instagram, our Discord channel, YouTube, as well as Twitch, where we stream each and every other week. We probably will be playing quite a bit of Marvel Rivals, as Eric mentioned. If you want to support the show, you can do a couple things. You can head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are listening. Leave us a 5-star review. On YouTube, you can leave thumbs up. You can subscribe, leave comments. That helps as well. And share the content. Tag us. Let people know that you're watching or listening. Let us know that you're watching or listening. And that goes a very, very long way. But if you want to treat yourself this holiday season and maybe get yourself a little bit more Wait For It podcast, behind the scenes stuff, Eric will let you know how you can do all of that.
Yeah, so all of the free stuff is very much appreciated, but if you wanted to financially support us a little bit, Patreon, that's a great option. Probably the main option that you can use to support the show in that way. And in return for those funds, like our patrons, Briar, T3 Kato, Corey, and Stefan, you'll get behind-the-scenes access and early access to episodes like this one, in addition to bonus content and, who knows, maybe merch coming down the road. We've got a lot of things that we're planning going into 2025. But we understand everybody's situation is different. And again, we cannot stress enough all the free things that only take a moment of your time to do. The likes, the comments, the shares, any type of engagement, and especially those that are listening. Thank you so much. That means a lot. We just went over our 2024 stats and really, really happy about the results. So looking to take that growth into the new year. But with all that being said, my name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. And please don't forget, we release new episodes every Wednesday on the podcast with bonus content on platforms like Twitch and maybe TikTok. And all you have to do is wait for it.
So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.